I'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity podcast for marriages. And today we're going to be talking about adult children. And we're going to start off when Roseanne and I were both married. She was 19, I was 20. She was a teenager. And when, we had about 3 years without any children, we were in college. And so we had a lot of fun, a lot of vacations. It was really cool. Then we started having kids, and being a young couple, people kind of make fun of you. So they'd go ahead and they'd say, Mark, your wife is pregnant again. It's like, yeah. And it's like, hasn't anybody ever told you what causes that? I'm like, right. That's why we keep having children. Like, I don't know. It was just weird to me. People are strange. Anyways, up until they started turning teenagers, they're like, isn't it hard to have 7 kids? It's like, not really. They're like employees, they're like, I don't know, any group of people. As long as they produce more than they consume, you can have an unlimited number of them. I'm just saying, that's what it is. This is why big families, because you're not a better parent if you have a large family necessarily. You just have no other options to delegate. The older one has to help the younger ones because it's the only way you survive. And so that teaches the older one some really cool things and important things, I think, in life. It's been brought up that it might be good to have Roseanne and I and our kids' personalities mapped out. So we'll look at that for a future podcast. Elaine has volunteered too, and she said she and her family might be interested, in doing that too. So if we can see the personalities, then you can see that. And then there's also some cool stuff on birth order that's helpful. One thing, if you haven't done it already, I would go ahead and do quick for couples personality assessment. So this is really good because you have partner A, partner B, and it goes through and it does, personality. You do it together. Don't let the other, don't let one influence the other. So, so make sure you don't do that. So that's right there where you can do that. If you haven't registered for the, Life GPS mobile app, you'll want to do that. Once you do that, you'll be introduced to a mentor for this group, and they'll help you get the most out of the group. So today's podcast is going to be on adult children. When we had 4 teenagers at the same time, that's when things got tough. Like, people are like, what are you thinking having 7 kids? It's like, it's not that big a deal. Like, no, we're fine. And then they hit teenagers. We had 4 teenagers at the same time for many, many years. One would get out, another would get in. And I was thinking, what was I thinking? Like, what were we thinking? There's something that's called the teenage principle. It's important to understand. Melissa is actually the one that helped me discover this. So thank you, Melissa. She is now, a young mother with 2 really cool girls, young girls, and she's pregnant with her 3rd one. But I remember when she was 15 years old and getting her driver's permit, and she was backing out of the driveway for the very first time, and she was in the driver's seat. I was in the passenger seat. And I said, well, honey, before you go, I just want you to know that you're probably going to be the safest driver you might be for a long, long time. She's like, she was scared to death. She was so petrified of driving. And she said, why, Dad? I said, well, honey, it's because you're a pathetic driver right now, and you know it. You're a terrible driver, and you know it. She's like, gee, Dad, thanks, I think. And she didn't almost hit a tree. She didn't, get in nothing. Everything was fine. Why? Because she's a terrible driver, and she knew it. Fast forward, I don't know, 3-4 months. I come home from a business trip, backing out of that same driveway. She's in the driver's seat. I'm in the passenger seat, and her friend is in the back seat. And we're backing out. And her friend said, Melissa, did you tell your dad after he came back from his business trip, you almost hit the big Oak Creek flat backing out? Melissa looked at her friend in the back seat, and then looked at me, and she said, no, I hadn't told him that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I said, honey, do you know why you almost hit the tree. And she's like, no, I don't. I said, because you didn't listen to me. I told you that when you become confident driver, that's when you go ahead and are dangerous. When you're a terrible driver, you know you're a terrible driver. You're actually not as bad because you know you're more cautious. But as soon as you think you got it figured out, this is a lesson that, adults need to learn. When we become confident, often that's when we fail. Prideful, we think we know we got it under, hand. Having 7 adult children, I think that cures maybe all confidence, overconfidence, that cures all pride. You're just like, really? And so the teenage principles, teenagers think they can do things they can't and don't think they can do things they can't. As a parent, it's exhausting. Like your teenager will come up and say, I can't do that. And you're like, of course you can. You can do that. And they're like, no, I can't. And all this drama, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's like, go do it. You can do it. And then all of a sudden they'll say, oh, I can drive. I can do this. Oh, yeah, I can do it. You're like, oh, I don't know if you really can. And so not only is it hard for a parent, but it's hard for the children too. So they're going through a dimensional jump, and then adults do that every decade at 20, at 30, at 40, at 50. On Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, I'm going to be 60. And so I'm going through a dimensional jump now where I just know I'm in a gap. And I'm going to be overconfident things I should be underconfident. I'm going to be underconfident things I'm going to be overconfident. I'm going to be like a teenager again. Great. That'll be a lot of fun. Rosanna, what would you like to say about adult children?
Well, I think the thing is starting out with the kids when they're little is understanding that you're a parent and not their friend. But as you become older, as they become older and they're out on their own, I think it changes. I think they become more if you have raised them in the proper way and they turn out pretty good, they can become your friend and be more of a, more of a listen. They may listen to you more. I am, struggling with that a little bit on some of my children where they don't see that as a good point yet. But who knows if I think Elaine having younger children getting an idea that keep strong, because when they grow up, if you've been strong, maybe they will listen to you more.
One of the
That's
things that we're getting feedback from, the listeners of the podcast and viewers, is what they love how you and I get spicy with one another.
Hey, why do they love that?
No, they just think it's real. It's not some couple that, it's just some couple that goes and talks about marriages. They're like, they get in fights, like right live, like it's live. They're in fights.
Uh-huh. So, do you have a battle that you want to have with me right now?
Well, I was like, this is weird. So Rosanna said, when they're your friend, when you're young, you're not their friend. And when they get to be adults, then you are their friend. Things change. And I'm like, really? Huh, that's interesting. So do you think you were their friends when they were growing up?
Oh, yeah. That's the challenge. See, if I would have been less of their friend and more of their mom, maybe the relationship when they're older, they would listen to me more because I was less of a friend and more of a mom.
Well, that's kind of cute. So do you think I was their friend growing up?
No.
So do you think they listen to me now?
Sometimes. I mean, they always come to you for advice. So, I mean, I don't get a lot of, well, I get advice when it comes to like owies or stuff like that with the kids, but I don't get the advice questions that you get. So I think that comes from you, the way you raised them on the way up.
I think the thing is they knew when they were kids. I mean, they came up and they said, when we want to feel good, go to mom. So that's the amiable. Go to mom. And when we want something fixed, go to dad. Dad's not going to tell us what we want to hear. He's just not. He's just not. Mom will tell us what we want to hear, and that'll make us feel good. So we'll feel good. But so the driver will tend to do better. And so what the amiable gets bitter about is that the driver parent will typically have deeper relationships with the kids than the amiable parent. The amiable parent tells them what they want to hear. The amiable parent will go ahead and, meet their needs, service them, be there, just unbelievable. Service, do what they want, like everything. But the kids won't respect the amiable. The driver looks like the bad parent, looks like the hard parent, the one they don't like, because they're not telling them what they want to hear. So they'll actually like the nice parent, fall in love with the parent that's not nice to them, because they're like, mom likes me. Dad loves me. Dad's willing to go ahead and put the relationship online. And so one of our children, she was an adult, and she was having an attitude over, she was living on her own, and she was having an attitude over Christmas, and I just let her have it. I just let her have it. She left crying and all angry. It was right on Christmas. And Rosanna was crying, and and then she wasn't talking to me, and Rosanna went ahead and came up and said, "You need to fix this." I said, "Fix what?" She said, "She's not talking to you. She hasn't in 3 months." It's like, this is not my issue, honey. Like, she is just mean and nasty. So she wants to fix it. I'm fine. I'll fix it. But you know what? I'm not going to chase her down. And you know what? She's going to have that attitude. You'll put up with that attitude, and maybe that's okay for you. It's not a judgment. I'm just telling you. They're like terrorists. They really are. And so, and when they get adults, sometimes it's even worse. And from a dad's perspective, I'll tell you, when your daughters have children, I've noticed this edge where all of a sudden they think they're smarter than their dad. And they are in some areas, but all of a sudden they have this attitude. They're like, I know. And it's like, I've given birth. It's like, okay, whatever. So, and then the boys, so it's like the kids they have some measure of success, and then all of a sudden it goes to their head. Questions or thoughts, Elaine, Rosanna, or Melissa?
No, I think you've got some good points, and it seems to me that I still struggle with that line of, what is it? It's not the boundary line on adult children, and what's helpful and what's not, what's too helpful. So I still struggle with that now.
Well, this is where it's interesting to me, where my sons-in-laws, more than one of them, have been really pretty harsh, direct with Rosanna. And I agree that what they're saying is largely right, but you're not her husband. You're his son-in-law. And, you better tread really careful, because I'll take you out. And two, is just because you and I agree that she's too soft, or she's too this, or she's too this, just because you and I agree doesn't mean we're three men. We agree. She's too soft. Doesn't mean she's too soft. She's the mom. She's the grandmother. And I've had to have some pretty strong talk with my sons-in-laws and say, guys, I agree with what you're saying, but that doesn't mean I'm right. And you know what? I'd tread very careful on that, because I'm careful and I'm her husband. Because just because I think that she's doing something doesn't mean I'm right. Elaine, you were going to share something maybe?
I was just going to say, I agree with the kids, where the stage where they're at, preteen or teenager, things that they can do, they don't want to do, things that you're very skeptical of them doing and knowing or being able to see the result of them doing it that they think they can do, and trying to figure out how you can convey that to them, but knowing that at times they will have to go down that route to be able to learn.
Right. Right. And it's intriguing to me on how many people think they know. And it's weird to me. My adult children, it's like not all of them and not all the time, but more times than not, had a conversation with one of my children and their spouse. And I said, guys, you think you know how to treat your youngest sibling. You think you know how I should treat them. I'm not saying you don't. I'm always open to hearing your advice about how I'm a terrible dad or whatever you think. I got fine with that. Like, I want the input, I do. So it's fine. But it's interesting to me on how you don't have any problem at all communicating how I'm a bad parent. But when somebody else communicates that you're not doing so good as a parent, you get angry. You get angry and you get upset. Think about it. Like, how many years of experience do you have of being a parent? You ought to be more open to being corrected and input from people who don't even have kids. So I don't think the answer is my kids not talking to me about how they think I'm not being fair, or how they think that I'm babying one of them or coddling one of them, or I don't think the answer is them not telling me what they're thinking. Because I believe that my kids can see things that I can't see. I think the thing that's hardest is, it seems to me that I'm more open to their input into my life than they are my input into their life. And that's hard. That's really, really hard. Other thoughts or questions from anyone? So sometimes people have said, it doesn't seem like, Mark, you and Rosanna come up with like solutions, almost like you're venting on some of the podcasts. And that's legitimate. And we appreciate comments, positive, negative, it's all good. It's all positive. So you can share, have a question or problem. You like a podcast, don't like a podcast, share that for sure. And being able to go through it. We hope that in future podcasts, like if we can map out our family, our 7 kids, maybe their spouses, maybe their kids, maybe not. But we can map that out. And then Elaine and her family, if you can see, and almost like case studies, if you can see, how Rosanna, like from my perspective, my feelings, and I just found out that my feelings were important like last year. And so from my perspective, it seems to me that I'm very open to input, like all the time. And that when I'm making decisions as a husband or as a father or grandfather, I know I'm very much aware that I could be wrong. Like all the time. Like what I'm doing, I'm too hard, I'm too soft, I'm too involved, I'm not involved enough. I mean, I get it. It seems to me, and hopefully we'll have a fight, because then we can make up on our date night tonight. But it seems to me that Rosanna is not open. Your thoughts on that, Rosanna?
I think there's some merit to that.
How much?
35%.
So I'm thinking 95%. So what we do is we take Rosanna's 35%, take my 95%, add them together. So that's going to be 130% divided by 2. That's going to be 65%. It's probably not as much as I think it is, but it's probably more than she thinks it is. So I'm at 95%. She's at 35 or 30% or whatever she said. She's at that. So that's a long ways off. That's enough for an argument. Like we don't agree. But if she can come up to 68% and I can come down to 60%, like 60% isn't that far off from 95%. 60% is not that far off from 30%. At least it's not as far, right? So if she can come up and say, if she can say, it's probably more than I'm realizing. And if I can say, it's probably not as much as I think it is, then I will give her more room and she will go ahead and give herself less room. I, as a husband, 39 years, I do not want to be in a relationship where I feel like I'm continually correcting my wife, or I feel that I'm continually having to develop her and continually having to fix this and this and this and this. I am a fixer. So, but I don't want that as a wife. And so if she's harder on herself than I am on her, then I don't have to be as hard on her as what I think is needed for her to be who she can be, or for the survival of our marriage, or the survival of our children. So this is what's kind of a cool thing to do. So all the kids kind of have me pegged as the hard guy, and they have her pegged as the nice gal. If she becomes the hard guy, she is far more effective as the hard guy than I am, because the kids are not expecting that. And if she becomes the hard guy, I could then go ahead and be the soft guy. I can be the nice guy. So it gives me a little bit of a break from always being the hard guy. It shakes the kids up, and that's just fun to mess with their heads, especially as adults. And then she, being the hard guy, she appreciates the role that I play, and she's more supportive of it. She has more compassion to say, Mark's job is not an easy job, to be the hard guy. So whichever you have, if you're in a marriage, your opposites are going to attract. And so if you're the hard guy, and if you're a husband and you're amiable and your wife is a driver, you need to make sure that you're disciplining the children. You need to make sure that your parents and family are not taking advantage of you or the family. Like, it's hard for me to always be the hard guy, but I'm a man. Oh, well, that's what men do. That's what husbands do. I can't even imagine being a woman and having to do what I've done. So as a husband, be careful about always being the good cop to your kids, because that's not going to go well. So shift that up, work that out, share with us, what your thoughts are. If you have any questions, connect with your mentor, or you can call toll free 888-230-2300 outside the US, 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.